Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at jonnydelsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
What is up, everybody? You know the drill. Mr. Adams not here. Give me a little mic check. Let me know in the chat if the mic is good to go. Sometimes there are technical difficulties, so we always like to be on our P's and Q's around here. But today we are going over some film on some top 30 visits that the 49ers have had with some wide receivers. The news broke this last week that Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana, Denzel Boston from Washington, and Concepcion from Texas A&M, that they are all have had top 30 visits with the 49ers, that the 49ers are bringing them in. Getting a closer look. Why is that so significant? If you actually look at the first player picked in their drafts for the last 4 drafts, 3 out of the 4 have had top 30 visits with the 49ers. So in 2025, it was Mykel Williams. He had a top 30 visit with the 49ers. Now, Ricky Pearsall, infamously did not. And that was because the 49ers that year were very focused on him as a receiver. They really liked him, and they didn't want to tip their hand to anybody because they were worried that he was going to go in the second round, and they didn't want one of those teams to jump him. They wanted him to think he was going to be there and think he was going to be there in the second, and they didn't want anybody to jump them for Ricky Pearsall. But in 2023, Jair Brown, he was the first draft pick that year in the 3rd round because of the Trey Lance and Christian McCaffrey trades. He had a top 30 visit with the 49ers. In 2022, Drake Jackson had a top 30 visit with the 49ers, and that was another year they didn't have a 1st-round pick. Drake Jackson was a 2nd-round pick. So there have been a total of 16 players since the 2022 draft who have had top 30 visits with the 49ers that have ended up getting picked or picked up by the 49ers in some way. They really do like these top 30 visits. They do mean something. Sometimes it's a smoke screen, but when you tend to see a position group cluster like this, especially for guys in the top end, I don't think it's just a smokescreen. I think they're trying to figure out what kind of player these are. I think they're looking at the 1st round because of what they've done in free agency. They don't have to hit any specific position in the 1st round. Like, they don't have to go tackle. They don't have to go edge. They don't have to go wide receiver. They're going to be looking at which one of those do they think will fit and be the best player in their system going forward. They like to invest those 1st-round picks in premium pay positions. Now, I will say what is interesting is we've seen interior offensive linemen over the last few years take a massive jump in pay. So maybe the 49ers start looking at an interior offensive lineman. Somebody like a Jennings Dunker might be there, that you may say, we need to invest top tier draft capital into an interior offensive lineman. I think Jennings Dunker is going to be a guard. I don't think he's going to be a tackle at the next level, but I think he can be an elite guard. So that's a possibility. I would like to see that. I would like to see them invest in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball a little bit more. I mean, obviously with Tyler Linderbaum just absolutely breaking the scales on the center market, this becomes very fascinating, of where the pay might go. They do tend to want to pick a tackle or a defensive end, defensive tackle, wide receiver. Those tend to be where they invest their early round picks in those kind of guys. If you look at different wide receivers, they have 3 wide receivers that they picked in the first 2 rounds in the draft over the years. So they aren't afraid to invest in that. I also want to say, people say it doesn't matter if it's a top 30 visit because Shanahan doesn't play rookies in rookie wide receivers. They tend to get redshirted. And I had this discussion, I guess, with some some people online, and this person did not appreciate me quote posting it. I'm not sure why. If you're going to get into a discussion on social media, and I put it out, and I have a large following, and I put it out for everybody to see. I don't know why people would get really upset over that. But somebody did and blocked me. So is what it is. But if we actually look at it and say, no, this is not actually true. When you look at Debo's rookie year, he had 11 starts, almost 800 yards receiving. When Ricky Pearsall came back from being shot, he played in almost every game, in pretty much every game after that, and got some significant playing time, especially down the stretch of the year. Brandon Ayuk, who, he supposedly was even in the doghouse that year. He started 11 games and he had almost 750 yards his rookie year. So if they have invested an early round pick in a wide receiver, that guy plays. He just does. They find a way to get him on the field. It's the 4th, 5th, 6th round pick guys that don't get the playing time. And Shanahan, because once they're picked and they're in that 4th, 5th, 6th round, they've got to earn their way on the field. And a lot of these guys have had injuries in training camp. That was what happened with Jordan Watkins. And the unfortunate part about it is when those guys get an injury in training camp, you can pretty much, unless other injuries absolutely force them into action, you're not going to see them on the field. Shanahan famously this last year was asked about Jordan Watkins. He said, well, he has to prove that he's better than the guys in front of him. And they said, well, how does he do that? And he said, well, he would have had to do that in training camp. And he was injured for half a training camp. So, that's the way it goes. But we're going to get into and talk about the 3 guys that the 49ers did bring in. I think if they pick one of these at 27, this guy's playing. Whoever it is, they're going to get playing time. They're going to see the field, and they would expect them to be an impact player this year. So it is important to look at it to see what they can bring to the table. And these are 3 very different types of receivers. That's what's fascinating about these is if you really, and we'll break them down, but they're not really the same position. Like they're receivers, but they don't play the position the same way. This is kind of like saying that Jake Tonjes and Luke Farrell are played tight end the same way. They don't. They're very different tight ends. Luke Farrell's more the blocking tight end, not as much of a receiving threat. Jake Tonjes is much more of a receiving threat, really not a great blocker. So we'll dive into these guys. There's different opinions, and people are saying, well, I would take this guy over this guy over this guy. I think what it's going to come down to is, what do you like from a receiver more? And what do you think of a receiver? What kind of receiver do you like to see? And so first guy we're going to dive into, let me get the little ticker on here because I can do this. I just forget. We're going to look at one Denzel Boston from Washington. So Denzel Boston is a big bodied receiver. I'll go down my scouting report on him. I went back and watched about half of his games last year at Washington, and what I saw was a prototypical X receiver. He was a late development college guy. He didn't see significant playing time until 2024. He was a red zone and touchdown monster. Fantastic size, 6'4", 210 plus. He's somewhere between 210, 215. He has long speed. He has speed to win deep, but it's not great long speed. He gets up to speed quickly, but the 25 to 40-yard time isn't as strong. He's much stronger in 0 to 25 than he is 25 to 40. I think we would have seen that if he had ran a 40 at the combine or his pro day. He didn't do either one, I think, because either one would probably have hurt his draft stock. I don't expect him, if he had ran a 40, for it to been better than 4.55. That's what the film kind of looked like, was a 4.55 guy. But he gets up to speed quickly, so he can win at 25 yards deep. It's between 25 to 40 that those windows start to close a little bit. He has to win early and have a decisive quarterback to throw between 25 and 35 yards downfield, or windows get smaller. He's got vice grips for hands, incredibly strong, and big hands makes contested catches look routine. Not afraid to catch the ball over the middle. He won't be a yak guy, but will get yards after contact. Knows how to use his big body and takes pride in being bigger and more dominant than the other player. That showed on film. That's interesting. As I put in here, he has an alpha personality that shows on tape. You can see that, and we'll look at some of that. Has enough vertical speed to threaten deep and draw attention, can run most of the route tree with enough effectiveness, but lacks burst out of the break. Physically imposing blocker who enjoys imposing his will on another man. Will be a Juwan Jennings with more speed. Juwan Jennings probably a 4.7 receiver, so he's quite a bit faster than Juwan. But similar size. Juwan is 6'4, 6'5, about 210, 215. Denzel Boston is pretty much the same size. He makes very similar contested catches. He's just got more speed, and he gets up to speed quicker. So, and he's a nasty blocker, like Juwan would be a really nasty blocker. So if the 49ers are looking at, we need to replace that kind of big slot outside guy, can do either one of those things and almost function as a small flex tight end, then this would be your guy. I think he would make a lot of sense for them. But if you're looking at a guy just to purely run the entire route tree, to be a Brandon Ayuk, where he's going to run a lot of these high crossers, these long through routes, that's where that speed, I think, makes a bigger difference. People would think about, when I say like beyond 30 to 40 yards, the windows get smaller. They think of just downfield throws, and they're thinking, well, Brock's not launching the ball 50 yards down the sideline. I'm not talking about those kind of routes. When you look at a high crosser, okay, it's going to start on one side of the field, and the field is 53 and a third yards wide. By the time you climb 12 yards, 16 yards, and you run all the way across the field, you're running a 50 to 55 yard route to get all the way over there. That is where the windows become smaller. Think about Juwan Jennings against the Panthers, okay, how he ran that big Dover route, and it was I think, was it Horn who ended up picking off Brock, and he ended up closing the separation gap with Juwan Jennings. That's the kind of thing you start to see with Denzel Boston on tape, is on those kinds of routes. You see that there's the initial separation, but then the windows close as the longer he runs, because that long speed is just not the same. And that's my biggest concern with him, is on those kind of routes. I don't think you're going to want him to run those high crosses. I don't think you're going to run, he can run some of the Dovers and stuff, but that becomes more of a question of, can you maintain that separation all the way across the field? If he's playing against zone, it's a little bit different, but if they're just manning up, that becomes a different story. This is more of a contested catch guy with more speed, who has big time playmaking ability as far as being able to go high point a ball. So let's look at some of the tape here with Denzel Boston. Big thing that shows up is that he isn't afraid to go over the middle. So he's running a skinny post here, and this is against Wazoo in the Apple Cup. They're showing split safeties here. They're going to end up rolling over Denzel into a cover 3 cloud. So they're going to get this safety to roll over the top, have the other corner squat underneath that, so they can kind of bracket him with these defensive backs and roll this coverage towards his direction. But he has no fear. I like this. He's going to stem over the top, and he's going to run the skinny route. The quarterback's looking at the safety. He says, well, you're on the other side of the field. You got to come all the way over here. I can beat you with that throw. He's going to try and rifle this thing in here. Denzel Boston knows he's most likely going to get hit. No fear, still a full extension of the body to go catch that in traffic with the closing safety. That is a big time trait for the 49ers. They want guys to go over the middle without fear. This is where his strengths show up. He's going to run a little stutter and go. This is big time, big guy sort of stuff. So here's where that gets up to speed quickly. He's gonna stutter down. This corner is going to squat, and you're going to see the separation here early out of this. And that's where it is. He's taking off long strider. He's getting it. He's even. This guy's trying to get up to speed as well. There's the initial separation. And then as this ball goes, this separation is going to close. But he's so big. He's got such strong hands. He makes this look like he's just playing toss and catch in the backyard. 6'4", goes and high points the ball with those big, strong hands. He's not a body catcher. He's a hands catcher, and the hands are just really strong. Goes up, gets it, and the defensive back has no chance. That's the kind of stuff you see from him. You're going to see him here run a read route. So this is a route that goes down. It's going to read the defensive back. If the defensive back stays on top, he's going to squat this down. And initially, the quarterback's a little late. The ball should be out here. He should be throwing this to a spot. He's getting a little indecisive on this. Is he going to sit or not? And that gives his under coverage a little time to gain depth, take this away. But you like that he's going to see it, and then he's going to say, I'm going to work to daylight to go help my quarterback out. Understands the scramble drill, understands present yourself as a large target to the quarterback. I like that. Here's where he really shines. Red zone target. They're hard inside leverage. In the red zone, they play this inside out. So he's going to jab step move this guy just a little bit more, give his quarterback more space to then have a ton of room out here just to launch a fade. This is a jump ball, one-on-one situation. Put it out there. Goes high points the ball, gets undercut, strong hands, and lets the guy know, I just mossed you. You got mossed. This is the kind of attitude you love to see, to go high point the ball, full extension, get up over that guy, land on him, and let him know. Let him know you just got cooked. I love it. Got some edge to him. Got some edge. You love receivers with a little bit of edge. That's what you like to see. Here you're going to see just a straight go ball, and it's again a contested catch. It's not a big window, but this is a guy you can put it up there, and he's just going to go catch it over somebody's head. He tracks the ball really well in the air, and those big strong hands is just a load to deal with as he's going down the field. He has enough speed where these guys really struggle once they get out of phase. Once a defensive back is out of phase, you can put it up into the end zone, and he's going to go high point it. Doesn't tip the catch until the last moment, and uses that height, that big frame to go high point the ball. So this is a big time red zone, outside target, prototypical X receiver. Lot to like there. Here, even on a corner who's going to be in a bail, you're going to see him just run a go route on this. And this is, again, a quarterback saying, I have a guy who's probably got 4+ inches on this corner. And so I get a one-on-one situation here. Even though he's not open, I'm going to throw it out here anyways and put it up there. He can adjust to it and go get the ball. Big, strong guy. You see these kinds of throws a lot. They were not afraid to do this. Now, I will say he also one thing that hurt him as far as his production, he had a little over 850 yards senior year. I think he had one of the highest uncatchable target rates in college, meaning when he was targeted, it was one of the highest rates of those throws being completely uncatchable, and that showed on film. Washington's quarterback was not the most accurate kid. So that's something I think in a better system, in a better program, or, well, I wouldn't necessarily say a better program. Washington's got a pretty good program over there. But with a better passing game, he probably could have been 1,000+ yard receiver there. I will say he's a strong blocker. This is where, it's an element that if it wasn't for this, I would say the 49ers are not eyeing him in the first round. I think he would really be a second round draft pick because he doesn't have a really diverse release package. He's not winning a lot of the outbreakers, the short ends and stuff. These are a lot of contested catches and stuff. But his blocking, this may be one of the best blocking wide receivers in this class. Here, they're going to run a little read option. Quarterback's going to take this out, and he's going to come and block this corner and just watch what he does to the corner up top as he gets into this and just puts the guy on the ground. And then what I love is how hyped he is after this. Watch his reaction here as he's hyped. Oh, he's hyped over that block. That's what I love. A guy who can physically dominate in the blocking and loves doing it. Here you're going to see it. He puts his man on the ground and you're going to see the hype. There it is. He's hyped over that. I love it. Here you're going to get a crack block on a defensive end. We could not do this last year. Our receivers we had trying to do this, they would sometimes throw a body in there. I love Kendrick Bourne. He would throw his body in there. Didn't do a whole lot of times. But here you're going to see a guy who uses all bit of his 6'4" and 210 pounds, puts his man on the ground, and he's stalking him as he's going. He's hyped again. I love this from a receiver. He's going to come down on this crack block and just put his man on the ground. That is awesome. Okay, here he's going to run this as a clearing route. Or sorry, they run a little wide receiver screen. He's going to run a clearing route. They're going to run a little wide receiver running back screen here. And he's going to run this as a deep route. He's supposed to run this guy off. He knows it's a screen, so he's going to run this guy off, and then he's going to wait for it, then convert and become a blocker. He's down here. Watch him as a blocker. Oh, he shoves the guy, gets him, goes and gets him again, finishes and celebrates the touchdown that he knows he got a block for. That is the kind of stuff he brings as a downfield blocker. Love it. Here, you're going to see him as a receiver in close. This is where the 49ers are going to want to put him. They put their receivers in close a lot. He's on another crack block on a defensive end. This is where it shows up again. He's going to come in here and bang. Here he puts the guy on the ground, has a little stance over him, lets him know, I put you on the ground. That is awesome to see. Receivers who will throw their body in there and put a defensive end on the ground. Here he is, 91. Watch him get put on the ground. He stumbles a little bit, but bang, there it is. I love that from a receiver. Now, here's where he's not as strong, is this separation across the field. So you're going to see him here. He's running a shallow crossing route. There's initial separation, but as I said, when these routes get long, this separation decreases. And so there's very little after the catch on these. It's a catch and immediate tackle. This is important because on these kind of routes, it's 3rd and 8, and he gets 6 yards on a 6-yard throw. That's on a shallow crossing route, which is a 49ers bread and butter. That's some of the issues I have with his long speed. Here you're going to see it. They're going to bring a corner blitz. He's going to run another crossing route, and he's going to end up with his safety picking him up. Again, there's initial separation. You're going to see this out of the break right there. There's separation here. As this route goes, even though this guy has to take a longer path, this separation decreases. So it shows you his long running is not there. So that's a play that's a route that, in years past, you'd see Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. They would catch this thing out here and then have the speed to turn this vertical. And you're looking at maybe a touchdown. Well, here, Denzel Boston's not going to be that guy. This is going to be, catch it, maybe get a few yards after that. That's where that long speed shows up. It's not the 50-yard down the sideline. It's on those kinds of routes. where you see it. Here, he's going to run a little tree route. It's going to be a 10-yard out route. This is where some of the shorter ones, that the separation is just not there. You can see it. He doesn't have that burst out of his breaks. And you see him, usually it's tight throws. Those are, and these are kind of routes that become real dangerous, because if your quarterback doesn't kind of leave it out there a little far towards the sideline, if this is anywhere, short inside, it's such a tight window that those are pick six kind of throws. So that's a challenge with Denzel Boston, of saying, okay, do you pick this guy in the first round? The blocking definitely lends him more to that side. So that's where it is. That's the skinny there on Denzel Boston. Give him a grade, your draft grade for a first rounder. If you would give him an A plus, give him an A plus. If you'd say a C minus for a first round grade for a first rounder, if the 49ers pick this guy, what would you grade that draft pick there? And while I get a little drink and we get to a super chat. Cayman's Island, appreciate you, buddy. Good friend. He's go support his channel. Go click on his icon. Go support his channel. Go subscribe. He talks 49ers stuff. He's awesome. Says, do you really see the 49ers going wide receiver at 27? I think we actually mix it up and go O-line for once. I also think we could trade up or trade out. Myles G. Are you saying Myles Garrett? I don't think they're going to trade for Myles Garrett. I don't think so. That's a really hefty price to go get Myles Garrett. So I don't think they're going to trade him. I don't think the Browns organization like Shanahan. I just don't think they do. I don't think they're going to want to deal with him. I just don't. They could go O-line. They absolutely could. I think there's a number of guys that make sense. I think some of the people that are being mocked to them aren't realistic. Caleb Lamu, Spencer Fano. I don't think those guys are realistic, which both those guys played at Utah, which is kind of wild. I was watching the Texas Tech and Utah game last night, because that's a fascinating game to watch matchups, because you had Caleb Lamu on the left side, you had Spencer Fano on the right side, you had Romello Height and David Bailey, two of the top edge rushers in this class, going against two of the top tackles in this class. So that's actually a really good game. If anybody's doing any draft stuff and you want to look at tackles and edge players and you want to calibrate what these guys look like when they move around, go watch that game, because that game is going to let you know what does these guys at the top end of the pass rushing and pass blocking look like going against each other. Really good battles that they had there. I think they can go in a number of different ways. I think they're going to do their due diligence, and it really comes down to who they think. This is where it's fascinating. I think the 49ers truly are going to take the player that they think is the best player at a position of premium value. It's always about premium value, and they want the highest floor. So that's like Michael Williams. He plays a premium pay position, defensive end, interior rusher, and he had a really high floor because of his really good run blocking abilities, and and has really good arm length, things that they can use, good athletic ability. I don't see them picking a running back at 27. They just don't do that kind of stuff. They don't see the values there. They don't pick safeties that early because they don't see the value there. That's not a premium pay position. You can get a really good safety for $16 million. You can't get a really good offensive tackle for $16 million. You can't get a really good wide receiver for $16 million. You look at like the contract that Jackson Smith and Jigba just signed, $42.5 million, I think is what it was, per year. That's why they would go wide receiver, is because you're looking at saving $160 million or more over 4 years. If you can get a guy on a rookie contract that can do that. That's why I think they look at going wide receiver, because of just the pure savings against the cap that you get with a wide receiver there. So that's why I think that they're going to go into one of these premium positions early. What that means, is yet to be seen. But we're going to look at the next guy. We're going to keep moving on. We're going to look at one. I got to spell it right. One KC Concepcion. I like Hughes Wilkins here. He says liking KC Concepcion. He's a bigger Jalen Waddle. I do think that's a decent comp. My comp for him, if we're looking at body types of wide receivers and their ceiling, absolute ceiling, Denzel Boston is Mike Evans. Okay, now he's not the prospect that Mike Evans was coming out of college. I don't think he's going to be a Mike Evans. The one thing that is enticing about it is that if you pick Denzel Boston, he gets to understudy behind maybe the best big-bodied receiver that we've had over the last 15 years in Mike Evans, as far as that big frame, big body, high point, contested catch, but also turned into a phenomenal route runner. Didn't have that crazy speed down the field, but still won deep because he was such a good route runner. KC, if I was to say he hits the ceiling, we're looking at like a Terry McLaurin kind of guy. He's very similar size to Terry. I think they're literally like a quarter inch off in height, right around the same weight. He's not quite as fast as Scary Terry. He ran a 4.42. Terry McLaurin ran a 4.35, but I mean, we're talking 7/100ths of a second. So he's still got really good speed. And where he reminds me of Terry is not even in that straight 40 speed, but how fluid he is in and out of his breaks. He's extremely fluid. So I'll get to the scouting report here on KC Concepcion. He's a super fluid athlete with explosive speed. Can be an offensive weapon that has the ability to hit a home run from anywhere. Can be a yak monster with elite burst and speed. He's not going to run through guys. It's his takeoff speed, be able to turn the corner, make a move, and go. Runs routes with ease, good feet and fluid hips, smaller frame that can struggle against long corners who can run. So where that becomes where things start to break down for him is if he's facing a guy that's got a lot of length who can also run, because they can disrupt him at the break point and off the line where he can't use that really fluid hips and burst. And then it turns into, can I outrun you? And if that guy can run, then he's just taken away. So he needs to be able to work through, how do I face long corners who have speed as well? Because that's what you're going to face against the top, 15, 20 guys in the league at the position of corner. You're going to face that. And so you've got to be able to beat that. And so that's going to be the challenge for him of, can you grow in that way when you get to the NFL? Would be best suited as an off-ball receiver, limiting his press coverage reps. Can run the entire route tree, separates with explosive cuts, and has no fear of running routes and making catches over the middle. Blocking needs much improvement. Is not a great blocker. That is a big knock, and that's we talked about it a million times. That's a huge deal for the 49ers. They need their wide receivers, and they ask their wide receivers, and they require their wide receivers to block. That was a huge issue last year. Receivers who couldn't block. Would become an immediate explosive weapon to be moved around, has versatility to play slot or Z, and can take the top off a defense. So that is what my scouting report is on KC Concepcion. After what I've watched, I don't read a lot of other people's scouting reports. I don't like to get colored in there and have pre-existing views. So here you're going to see, this is what I like. He understands how to sit down in coverage, no fear, and he's going to go attack the ball in the receptions here. He's against Texas. So he's at the top. They're in close where we're going to see he's going to run a little stick route here. So they're running a little stick concept with the flat and the stick. And so he understands sit down versus zone. He knows this guy can collapse. He knows the linebacker can come in. The quarterback's already decided, I'm making this throw. So what does he do? He goes and he comes back to the ball. He attacks the ball, shields the defender from it, is going to make the catch. And then he's going to go and use that burst and takeoff speed to go get more yards. This is where he's special, is that takeoff speed. Has incredible acceleration. So the ability to make this catch, accelerate away, and go get yards after the catch. So there he turns a 5-yard throw into a 15-yard throw. that you really like. Here, they're gonna fake a little wide receiver screen. He's going to act like he's going to block and run a slant on this. Here, he knows he's most likely going to get popped. So here, they're going to throw this over. He's running his slant. This defender is coming down. He's probably thinking, I really wish my quarterback didn't make this throw, but he puts it in there. Still turns to shield himself from the catch, or at the catch point, isn't afraid to go make that catch in traffic. That's what you see. You like to see that. That's a big deal for the 49ers. This might be his best route of this entire game against Texas. He's going to run a little basic route here. Watch this explosion out of this break. This is where he's different. Boom. He puts his foot in the ground and gets straight across the field. This is what I mean when he is super smooth and fluid as a route runner to be able to duck in there and just take off and creates crazy separation. Brock, if he knows he's got a guy like this, he's putting this ball out now. he's letting this ball out here, and this is a catch where he's then going to catch that and then turn the corner and go get another 10 yards. That's what you really like about this kid. So he's going to come in motion here. He's going to run a little bench route, and just watch again how smooth this route is. He runs these with ease. That's just so fluid, is up there, never slows down. I mean, my goodness, this kid never slows down throughout this entire route. He's going to stem vertical. He's going to work through this on a bench route. Now, this throw should be out here to the numbers. It's a little inside, so he has to stop and go high point it. But man, ridiculously smooth route runner. Here he's going to run a Nebraska route. So this is going to be look like an Omaha, which is an out route, and then run vertical. Just watch the fluidity of these cuts in and out. He's going to work the out route, never slows down, vertical, and just runs right by the corner. And so, here again, these guys, neither of these guys had great quarterback play. I will say, if you're a fan of either one of these quarterbacks, I'm sorry. This quarterback he's staring this down. So what you want to see is these guys look this safety off and then throw this way out here, but he doesn't. And so the safety's over there. Guy puts it up. It's going to be a contested catch. He goes and high points it and comes down with it. Silky smooth route runner. This is against Notre Dame. Here you're going to see him just run right past a corner who's got cushion on a vertical route. I mean, this is just pure speed. He takes it off and he's gone. Now, the corner kind of tried to guess. He squats a little bit. He thinks this is going to be an inside throw. So he kind of, takes it down. He says, oh, you're going to take off and throw. But he's gone, and he's going to then put his arm up. When he's out here, there's no chance to get it. But you also see you have a safety bailing out on here because they know the speed that's there. And so this is a guy that then opens up and takes a top off a defense because he can be that wide open on these vertical routes. Big time guy who has really good speed and just super fluid route runner. If he isn't here, you're going to see him against press. If he isn't slowed down at the line, he will just straight run past guys. Now, he won't be able to do this as much at the NFL, but I mean, you're going to see here, once he gets on top of a guy, there's no catching him. He's gone. The separation increases as the route develops. So this is a difference from Denzel Boston. Remember, I talked about Denzel Boston, that the separation decreased in the long speed. Here, you see there's a little bit of separation, but now by the time we get deep down the field, we're at 35 yards downfield pretty much. Now the separation's wider. We're at 40 yards downfield. Separation is wider. So he is gaining distance on that corner. That is the difference between Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, is that you consistently saw that with Casey. You consistently did not see that with Denzel Boston. But Denzel Boston, a much bigger bodied guy, much better blocker. These are two different receiver types. Here you're going to see see, I got to remember where he is on this one. He runs a Dover route. So he's down here. He's going to run an in route. Just really good understanding, like the separation, the smoothness in these routes is just crazy. This is where you start really envisioning him in the 49ers offense. That a guy with inside leverage, he's just going to effortlessly break across the field. This is 49ers stuff. And then the separation, like he's got this, and this guy cannot go catch that. This is, again, if you're looking at the 49ers, you say Brock is going to take this and he's going to lay this ball out here, and you're going to go get it, turn on this corner, and this is a touchdown. Like this is what he does with the 49ers, that even though you're looking at, that's not a play he got to catch, that's a perfect example of what he does what he would do in the 49ers offense, and would be a home run hitter. So that's how you got to envision these guys in the 49ers offense. He's working a bench route here. From the slot, he's just going to run about a 12 to 14 yard out route. I love how he understands, again, how to come back to the ball. This is being able to win against leverage. So he's leveraged to the outside. The corner's playing outside leverage. He's still going to win across his face because he's so smooth in those breaks that the guy still can't get it. And he still understands, I'm going to make life easier. I'm going to come back to the ball for my quarterback and go make a catch. And so, those out route throws, this is where the 49ers and Brock have been so good. And he had Brandon Ayuk. He would put these throws out there. This is where KC is looking good. Then you can put him on the move and you can get the ball in his hands and go have him make people miss. He's not a run through guy. He's a make people miss guy. Here you give him on a little jet sweep. He's going to make the first guy miss, and then he turns vertical, and that acceleration gets into the end zone. You can put the ball in his hands. Now, here's where the knocks start coming, is blocking. Not good. This was what a lot of his blocking attempts look like. Not much there. Blocking is not good. He's got to diversify his release packages. So here he's just so used to being able to burst and run away from guys. Here he's going to be running a slant, and this will remind you of the pick six that Brock threw against the Bears with Juwan Jennings. Is that the guys straight jumped the route. Juwan Jennings did not diversify his release package, and this becomes a problem. And you see this sometimes. He says, all right, he starts leaning in because he thinks I can beat this guy across, and corners jump in this. If his quarterback's making this throw, this is going to be either a pick or batted up and into one of these guys, and then you have a pick and it's going the other way. So that's where he needs to improve, diversify the release package a little bit more, needs to become a better blocker. So like we did in the previous one, let me go back and see what people said about Denzel Boston. Hugh Wilkins, B-. Scuba Pat, B-. Mike B, C-. People not high on Denzel Boston in the chat. But Mike L says Denzel's his number one guy. So what do you think of KC? Looking at the tape, what do you think about KC Concepcion? If the 49ers picked him at 27, how would you grade that pick? Would you grade it as an A? Would you grade it as an A-, C-? We'll see. Going to give you a minute to type that in while I get a drink. All right. Now we move on to the guy that I think is least likely to actually be there at 27. If he's there, it's very, very intriguing. So that is one Omar Cooper Jr. Bummed Adam couldn't be here for this, and this is an Indiana guy. He would be all over Omar Cooper Jr. He's a different wide receiver than either of these other two guys. My scouting report is dynamic threat with the ball in his hands with home run speed, separation ability, and yak skills. He has all three of those. Lower body, so he can win deep on routes. He has the speed to win deep. He has separation ability in his routes, and he's got the skills to get yards after the catch, either running away from guys or running through guys. Lower body strength, runs through contact and route running, and as a ball carrier, high success rate hitter that could be a volume receiver who gains yards who gains extra yards. So he's not necessarily the guy who's going to be 16, 17 yards a catch, who's getting a lot of those big inbreakers that you're looking at constantly throwing. But well, I won't say constantly. You're looking at hitting about 4 of those a game. That was like Brandon Ayuk, 2023, 17 yards a catch. This would not be his role. His role is more of the we're getting 7, 8, 9 yards a catch because you want to get touches. And he's going to be a guy that could really work the underneath area, much like what Debo did. He's not the size that Debo was, but I think he could play a similar role. He can line up most places, but X wouldn't be the strong spot. He's just the size, arm length isn't ideal for X being on the line. Separation increases after cuts, showing burst in and out, and defensive backs who fail to maintain strong leverage rarely make up separation on him. This is where he really does shine. He's not as fluid as KC in his breaks, but his burst out of breaks, like if I compared him and Denzel Boston, is very different. He's running away from defensive backs. Denzel Boston, defensive backs are catching up to him. Is a problem for matching zones where linebackers would potentially have to cover him underneath, as he has the toughness to work short underneath and turn vertical quickly to run away from defenders, can run away from linebackers and safeties and through cornerbacks and nickels. The heavy RPO and zone read offense of Indiana left very few true run blocking reps on tape. A lot of times it was kind of go and stand, and if it's we're taking the read option and coming outside, then you wall the guy off. But if it's a handoff, they don't want him blocking a guy in the back, so he's not going to get a true run blocking rep. So his run blocking was much harder to grade and see. And really, there was nothing that showed too much good or bad. It was just kind of average on a lot of things. Would have to learn the intermediate and coverage adjustment routes down the seam to really showcase himself in a 49ers offense, as there was very little of that at Indiana. Indiana did not focus on the intermediate areas at all. There was a lot of RPOs. There's a lot of zone reads. There's a lot of play action and then shot plays. They didn't have a really steady intermediate game in the drop back passing game. They just didn't. So there's a lot of the route tree and coverage adjustment stuff that he would have to learn that they just did not run. Big ceiling and high floor prospect who would fit well in many offenses. It's hard to see him there at 27, especially with the Bills, who would be a near perfect pick or perfect fit picking right before the 49ers. When you look at what he could do and bring as a challenge in these zone read, in these RPO offense stuff, and you look at what the Bills have done with Josh Allen, that's where you start to go, okay, this guy really makes a lot of sense for the Bills. Like, he would make a lot of sense for the Bills. They've needed a guy who could do that, who, if people are playing him, Josh Allen, on the run, then they can get the ball out to him quick if they're playing that run game. So I have a hard time seeing him make it past the Bills, if he even makes it that far. But if he is there, he'd be a really intriguing prospect for the 49ers. And we'll see why. There's a lot to like about Omar. And again, I know I'm not the only one that's high on him. There's a lot of people that are high on him. I'm just not sold that he'll be there. So here he is. Okay. Here he is against Oregon. I picked a couple games against Oregon because these were games that Denzel Boston, when they played Oregon, he kind of disappeared. He was just kind of covered and not really separating. So this was a good example to say, okay, I know that Denzel didn't show out real well against Oregon. Omar Cooper does. So here's where I talk about high volume guy that really fits the 49ers. You're going to see him on a shallow crossing route. This is 49ers, what they love, how they love to use Debo. You're going to see Oregon here is going to be in a zone. They're running quarters here. So you get these. This is very common in the NFL. So you have this guy is a curl flat on the outside. This is Bryce Betcher, I think, over here. He's one of those two guys. But this linebacker now has to try and run with Omar across the field. And this is where, again, just dump it off to him, and that linebacker has no chance to catch. And so he can catch it and turn vertical. get yards, and then punish the defensive back. I like that. He likes to punish guys who try and make a tackle. That is where you see him in the 49ers offense. Catch that. Tough enough to take shots against linebackers, but they can't run with him, so he's out there, and then he can turn vertical and get more yards. But he's also a very good route runner. He's running a tree route here, 10-yard out route. He's going to completely turn this corner around. Guys in a bail technique, what you see in the NFL, and he just slips out here with impunity and go and can get you 11 cheap yards. That's cheap yards. I mean, that's easy. So love that. Here is, again, where he shines. Run a little stick route. This is a Tony concept, right? They're going to run this off. 49ers do this all the time, is that he's going to run this little stick route here, and quarterback can make this throw. Now, here's where you see, again, this is an RPO. This is why I say that they didn't have a lot of this intermediate developing stuff, because you see all these offensive linemen there run blocking, and then they run this little stick out here. This was very common in Indiana's offense, but you can throw it out there. It's not a great throw, but he just runs through the contact, and he then goes and he's going to break one tackle, break another tackle, and go get a first down. This is where the 49ers did not have a lot of this last year, where you can get a throw that is 5 yards, 6 yards short of the sticks and still get a first down. We didn't have a lot of this. We didn't have this against the Seahawks. This was a problem, is they would throw it underneath and guys were getting tackled immediately. So when they give you a big cushion, you couldn't throw it underneath and have a guy who could go get a first down. That is where he shines. You're going to see him here on a little curl route. It's going to end up short of the sticks. This is, again, where you can get it out. This is Brock Purdy, right? Quick game. Get it out quick. Get this guy in here. It's short of the sticks, but guess what he does? He's going to go fight through contact and go get a first down. This is second and medium. He catches it 2 to 3 yards short of the first down and goes and gets a first down through contact. That's what you like. Here, the separation out of the break. He's going to run a little tree route here. You're going to see him on an outbreaker. This is where we didn't see guys separate away from coverage. You see the coverage is tight here at the catch point, not nearly as tight, right? He's running away. Separation is increasing out of the break. You can do this. Brock would feast on these sort of things like Mendoza did. That's where you really like what he's got, what he brings to the table. Runs away from that coverage. Now you're going to see him on a blaze out. I think he's right here. You're going to see him on a little blaze out. So he's going to run this like a drift route or a Dover route. They're going to end up matching this in quarters. So he's going to end up getting man coverage against the safety. And this is 49ers. Woo. Oh, love that. That is a route that we love to run. Ricky Pearsall runs a lot of these. You make it look like you're running this over here on the hitter. You get the safety to bite, and then you break out. Safety bites, you break out, fluid, burst, throw it out there to get it to him, then more yards after the catch. Never goes down, right? Because he's got that strong base, that strong lower body, able to keep going through contact. All right. We'll keep it moving. We're going to see him to the top. He's going to return a little stick route again into a 10-yard gain. Like I said, we just didn't have this ability. It's the same play you saw earlier. He gets that stick route, runs through the contact, and gets it first down. 2nd and 8, catches it 3 yards short, and he gets a first down and then some. We didn't have this last year. Oh, love it. All right, here you're going to see him in motion. Here's that lower body strength to run through contact. He's going to get contact on this route and still has the strength just to run through it. So there's a contact, just runs through it, and the separation increases. He gets it. Now, if it's a little bit better throw, he probably gets more yards after the catch, but he has that ability. He can do it. So now you see the home run ability. He's not just a yak guy. He's not just an underneath route guy. Here you're going to see he's going to run a wide and Skinner, and this is where he's got that home run ability. He can win deep. Here he's going to work it wide, get this corner on his heels, and then run this post. So You see here, okay, they're even. Pay attention to that. Mendoza's about to let this ball rip down, and he just climbs away from that defender. Nobody's catching him. When he's got that speed to win deep. He can be a home run hitter. Really like that. Here, he's at the top. He's going to run some Miami route for the 49ers. He's going to sit down over the middle. No fear, making these catches. Okay, so he knows he's going to get whacked coming in here and get the ball in there. He still, though, makes the catch. Still great balance. Stays up, turns, and gets more yards. That's the thing. This kid gets yards. Now, his yak average wasn't as high because there was a lot of because of the RPO system. So there was a lot of screens and RPOs that he was throwing out there that sometimes he was having to try and break 2 tackles to gain any yards. So there was a lot of 0, 1, 2-yard gains where it was just being swarmed. The defense was ready for what they were doing. So if you looked at just like pure pass catching, actually running a route, not just a wide receiver screen, his yak average, I think it was much higher than what some of the data shows. But here you can see that when they weren't ready for it, you can toss a screen out here. When it's a 1-on-1, you're going to get 2-on-2. So he's going to get a 1-on-1. He doesn't get a great block, but watch the ability to go make yards after the catch. Fight guys, stiff arm. Love it. This is why people like Mr. Omar Cooper Jr. He gets out here, goes and gets yards. That is what you bring to him. Now, knock on him is you're not going to get these contested catches. When things were tight, he wasn't a contested catch guy. So, I say these are very different. He's more of that Debo Samuel receiver. Casey Concepcion is more of the Brandon Ayuk type receiver. Denzel Boston more of the Juwan Jennings, but with much more speed. So I think if we were to think in 49ers land, these are the different types. Now, not saying they are those players because, like we saw with Micah Williams, everybody immediately wanted to compare him with Eric Armstead. I don't think that he's necessarily, they're not the same player. They're playing the same role. But if you look at all three of those guys, I think you're looking at very similar roles for them. Boston would play a little bit more of the X, but that's where they be. If Cooper's there at the end at 27 and the 49ers pick him, what grade would you give the 49ers for picking Omar Cooper at 27? Let us know in the chat. Let us know. Let's go back and see what some of the grades were people gave on KC. Or Michael, going back to that one, he has him as number 2 guy on his board. Cooper is more complete receivers. Collie says Hugh Wilkins. He said KC is his favorite. A-. The 49ers pick KC. A-. Mike B says B. But those tight cuts, I have PTSD seeing an ACL injury, knowing our team. I guess I could see that, but at the same point, I don't worry about that until it happens. And I know that sounds silly, but I don't trust that any of our guys stay healthy. Let's just be real. Hugh would say if you get Omar Cooper, it's an absolute A. I think for me, here's where I'm at. If you're going to go at this spot, I don't like Denzel Boston at 27 because I think you can get good value guys that can do that, because this is a receiving class that I think has a number of big body guys that isn't normal to see coming out, especially this amount of guys who can play pretty well. You have a Malachi Fields who we've talked about, who I think is who has very similar speed to Denzel Boston. Is 6'4", is 215. You have a Jacoby Lane who's 6'4", 205, who has more speed. Jacoby ran a 4.47. I think he's got more speed than Denzel Boston. He's not the big hands, as much of a contested catch guy. He's not the blocker that Denzel Boston is. But if I'm looking at it at 27 and I think, okay, what else could I get there? Like if TJ Parker's there, I think, okay, I would take TJ Parker because I think he's going to be Uh, I think that's a talent that you don't have as much of later in the draft. Like if you get to this end of the second round, I don't think you have a guy who could be comparable in production to what TJ Parker would bring when you put him on a 49ers defensive line of Michael Williams rushing from the inside, Osa Odigizua, and Nick Bosa on the other side. I think TJ Parker makes that defensive line just nasty, nasty, nasty. Denzel Boston doesn't tell me, with this receiving core, does they suddenly become unstoppable between the numbers? And then, now you do have a couple really big red zone targets there. If you have Mike Evans and Denzel Boston, I mean, that's crazy. Plus the run blocking abilities you have with those big frame guys, I like that. I don't think he's going to give you the gravity that somebody like Omar Cooper is going to have gravity. Teams are going to want to know. We need to know where he is at all times because we need to get more than one body to the catch point. Denzel Boston kind of gives you pre-snap gravity. They're going to want to make it look like there's a safety over the top. They don't want to have it necessarily be just a one-on-one press situation. KC Concepcion, he's going to be a guy that they want to make sure they have their athletes guarding him because he has such speed. So there it comes down to who brings the most gravity to open up this offense. Omar Cooper, obviously, but again, I don't think he's going to be there. If Denzel Boston's there, I don't think he's going to create as much gravity. And so if you're looking at a first round talent, I think I'm going to look at maybe tackle, defensive end if I'm there. So for me, it's really Omar Cooper and then KC and then Denzel Boston. But sorry, I had to mute that. Had a little sneeze coming in. So, but let us know in the comments, in the chat, how you'd feel about these top 30 visits. Do you think the 49ers are putting up a smokescreen after seeing who these guys are? Do you think that there's a realistic option? I think absolutely. If with Omar Cooper, that's a Kyle Shanahan kind of player. Okay. If he's there at 27, I think the 49ers are running that pick in. I think with what he looks at what he can do with this guy in the play action game, in the short passing game, this is a 49ers receiver. Casey Concepcion, I'm not 100% certain. I think so, but we'll see. I do like that Casey wanted to go play in the Senior Bowl, even though he was already being projected fairly high. He didn't play in the Senior Bowl because he had a minor knee scope happen like a week or two. I think it was a week before the Senior Bowl, ended up having to have that done so he could get into the pre-draft process from there. But I think they really are looking at receiver in this draft. I think you're going to see one in the top 2 picks. Personally, I would love to see him take Sam Roush in the second round. But I do think that they will genuinely consider a guy at receiver in the top 2 picks. I think it's going to be one of you're going to have 2 of 3 positions in the top 2 rounds. You're going to have offensive line, defensive line or defensive edge, and receiver. I think those are 2 of those 3 are your first 2 rounds. So anyways, appreciate y'all staying in, coming in for the show. Appreciate everybody member of JFA49.com. Super appreciate you guys so much. That's what allows these videos. I mean, that's a lot of film to work through on 3 different prospects and their college tape to get through it. And so I know it sometimes feels like there's not as much being pumped out, but there's like 3 times the amount of work that comes in for like a review video. So appreciate everybody at JFA49.com. You are truly the financial backing of this work and really appreciate it. Because once this ends, the NCAA is going to take all the money off this video. And they fight hard. They fight tooth and nail. So there is no chance of getting all that back. So thank you for the super chats that come in and all the members of JFA49.com. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.